I loved WandaVision. I did. Episodes 1 through 8, I unabashedly love. I understand that episodes 1, 2, and 3, it took some time to get some traction for the show. I, on the other hand, loved it right out of the gate. I knew this was going to be something different. I knew it wasn't just going to be a straight sitcom. That's not what Marvel does. I understood that it was being built into the DNA that WandaVision was not just going to be a 50s sitcom, a 60s sitcom, a 70s sitcom, an 80s sitcom, a 90s sitcom. Like, I knew that's not what it was going to be. I knew there was a bigger story behind the scenes. We all kind of knew that Marvel and the MCU and Kevin Feige were taking their inspirations for WandaVision from the House of M storyline. That was very evident. They kept dropping so many House of M Easter eggs all throughout the series. Even before the show started, we knew this, right? So then we come to the finale, and we have so many fan theory, and one thing, like, you get a little bit of information here, boom, and we're like, whoa, that was game changing, that was crazy. This is what I think is going to happen. So, Quicksilver, not just Quicksilver, but Evan Peters as Pietro Maximoff really made people start to think, oh, this is going to be Marvel's introduction to the MCU. That was my knee-jerk reaction. When Pietro popped up at the end of episode 5, I was like, oh, this is how we're going to introduce mutants. Like, here's the crossover into the multiverse. It turned out not to be true. That's fine. When they, even long before, because they confirmed that that's not, Pietro wasn't actually Pietro from the X-Men movies. They confirmed that. He was an imposter Pietro, right? They confirmed this long before the finale episode, and I was fine with that. The thing about the finale is that the way it was crafted, this is my problem with the finale. I don't have a problem with Marvel or the MCU not delivering on fan theory things. I have a problem with Marvel, the MCU, not delivering on things that, because they knew fan expectation. First of all, they knew what fan expectation was going to be. They knew that by casting Evan Peters, that we were going to have so many fan theories. They knew what they were doing. I don't mind that fake Pietro, turned out to be a nobody. What I mind is that they knew what they were doing. They knew that they were setting us up for a false expectation. The bait and switcheroo. It's the same problem that I have with Iron Man 3. With the Mandarin. I loved Iron Man 3. It's a great story. I don't love that they created such a great character with Ben Kingsley's the Mandarin character, and then turns out, nope, he was an actor the whole time. Well, who's the real Mandarin? And it turns out to be Aldrich Killian. I'm the Mandarin. And then we have, and then they even retconned that as soon as, that movie came out and everybody was all up in arms about it. Then Marvel came out with a one-shot, All Hail the King, with Ben Kingsley, to show us, oh no, there is still a real Mandarin out there. And now we're going to get the real Mandarin in the upcoming Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Okay, could we not just, why do we need to do this bait and switch thing? So that's just one small thing. That's one small thing. Based on, if anybody knows anything about the House of M story, you know that things do not end well for Wanda. It is an epic tragedy on a massive level. And they were building towards that. Now, I understand that the director of the last episode of the finale came out and said, I have a feeling some of you guys are going to be disappointed by this, but I don't know why you're disappointed, because this is what we're building up to the entire time. That's an easy way. That's a cop-out. That's an easy way to say, well, this is the story we've been telling the whole time. I contend that it's not. Because You know what you're doing when you craft this story, and then you don't deliver on. And I'm not saying I wanted a happy ending. I was expecting a tragic ending. I was expecting, and in some things I got right and some things I got wrong. Like, I knew that Vision was going to die. I knew that the kids were going to die. Maybe not like be killed, but I mean, like, I knew that they were going to go away. I knew that the hex needed to go away, and I knew that the kids in Vision were bound to the hex. So ipso facto, they're going to go away. I knew that, right? Natalie, I need to kick this over to you for a second. I need to collect more of my thoughts. Actually, just before I do, I put a poll out on the Twitters the other day. I just wanted to hear from you guys, see what your thoughts were about this. I said, was the WandaVision finale awesome? Was it disappointing? Did it have its moments? Or, like, was there anything else in there? And 83% of you guys said it was awesome. 16% was like, yeah, it had its moments. And that's kind of where I feel. I feel like, it had its moments. I don't quite agree with everyone so much that it was awesome. But yeah, it had its moments. Natalie, you've seen the finale. You have thoughts and feelings. You have thoughts and prayers to be sent out. Yeah, tell me what's on your heart.
Well, first of all, I'm so glad that we waited until just this moment to talk about WandaVision. I don't think you and I actually have discussed this at all.
We have not.
But I want to say overall, I think I agree with the 83%. I do think it was awesome. But let me kind of rewind a bit and tell you a little bit about who I am. I'm very, first of all, as you know, incredibly invested. I've always kind of been aware that canonically, if you will, Wanda is the strongest Avenger by far. She's got an amazing story. I believe that she, like so many other people in the MCU, were underutilized for the sake of time. But I always thought it was interesting just how underutilized she was compared to, her presence in the comics as being such a big deal. And I think that's kind of a little bit what you're touching on, fan theories and fan service, and also subverted expectations. That's a really difficult line to walk nowadays in our media savvy environment. Like, go to any YouTube channel, go to this YouTube channel, and you can see all these backstories. You can learn about chaos magic. You can learn. I mean, I had to actually Google these things when I think episode 8 popped up, or it was right before episode 8. In between, I was like, "What is chaos magic? I don't understand the term bones." So I mean,
those deep Marvel bones.
Those deep Marvel bones. It's like a deep tissue massage. The Marvel metatarsals.
Marvel's
I don't
metatarsals.
know if I'm saying that. Metatarsals. So he has seen this fandom for sure. That is probably a great example of how fan expectations and subverted expectations are dictating the storyline in a way that I think is unhealthy to the franchise. It's unhealthy to the story. I'm only going to talk about Star Wars for a second because I know that's a whole other war we could get into, but that's not the focus of this video. You think about The Force Awakens and all the theories that popped up about that, and then how The Last Jedi subverted all those expectations. And it actually delivered on Awakens, and it ended up, I think, destroying the momentum of the Star Wars franchise. And set that aside, you can put that back in the MCU's court, where you think about Avengers Age of Ultron. What a movie, if there was a movie that I feel like this is not delivering what I wanted from a sequel to the Avengers. Like this is really weird. Like, you got the hour on Hawkeye's farm, and then you have Thor going to a hot tub of knowledge, point of which is cut out on in deleted scenes. My husband and I, we were just watching Avengers Age of Ultron last week. And when you see that movie in face value, and then you see it at the end of the Infinity War saga, different watch. The point of Avengers Age of Ultron is so much more important. And I will also say that after WandaVision, it's even more significant. I can't wait to see Wanda's storyline play out as I continue to rewatch MCU chronological order. Now having this informational depth about the character and every interaction that is in there. I feel like Age of Ultron now, 5-6 years later, is probably the most consequential in the MCU, far more than some of the other movies that are one-offs and are written off. And it just reminds me of how much people kind of wrote off Age of Ultron, myself included, that a lot afterwards. And I feel like that is one of the strengths of WandaVision as a series. And if you kind of step back and take a look at, what we got from the series, is here is a movie type storyline. This could have easily been a movie. I'm glad it the sitcom thing, it lends itself to television, and I think that that's in the series. But you could have kind of done a WandaVision, like maybe Marvel could have done that. Maybe Feige could have done that. But the problem with the movies is there's just not enough time to get into the nitty-gritty emotion of these characters. And when it comes to really teaching us something about one, that you can go back and watch the movies and have a greater respect for those characters moving forward, I think it delivers.
I agree with everything that you just said. My problem solely is the finale. Because like all of the backstory, like you talked about Avengers Age of Ultron. Age of Ultron has been my favorite Avengers movie since, because I kind of went back and forth between Age of Ultron and the original 2012 Avengers. But Age of Ultron, I think, ultimately wins because there's more story, there's more character development, there's more characters, there's more interesting pitting of characters with and against each other. Age of Ultron really kind of was the funnel that everything else came out of. Like everything good and everything bad that came out of the MCU kind of came from Age of Ultron. It was all a domino effect that started from Age of Ultron. There's more stuff that I want to get into, but I do want to address some of these comments that have been coming in so far. Laura Chapman Elder, Laura Chappie, coming all the way from Manchester. Are you still in Manchester? I want to say I know you're from Manchester. I don't know if you're still living in Manchester. Laura says, it was so layered and built up amazingly. I agree 100%. I just take issue with the last episode. But yeah, it was so layered. It was so built up. And that's the thing. I love the relationship between Wanda and Vision. It was beautiful. Even in the last episode, after they put the kids to bed, and it's just Wanda and Vision standing there, and they know, like Vision knows the Hex is retreating. He knows he's bound to it. He's going to go away. The line, I got choked up. I was like physically fighting back tears at the line of, we've said hello before. Oh, sorry, we've said goodbye before, so it only stands to reason that we'll say hello again. Like even now, I repeat that,
I was waterworks at that moment. I'm glad you were fighting back tears. I was actually openly ugly crying. And I don't cry at movies. I really don't necessarily cry during an MCU movie. But God, Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen, such a great presence.
That, and it's those types of moments that they had built up all the way through the series, and they had one killer moment just before everything went away. I knew. It's hard because I understand that this show it depicts the 7 stages of grief, right? And the last episode is about acceptance, which is the final step in the grieving process. I get it. Maybe it's unfair of me to say that I expected Marvel to deliver an epic. Like, I wanted it to end in the middle of the grieving process where you just let go, just the anger and the torment just unabashedly goes haywire. You know, as I'm saying this in real time, we started this show saying, I have a problem with you, Marvel. But now that I'm saying it out loud, it sounds kind of silly. And I understand this is the final chapter in the grieving process. It just felt unfulfilling to me. And maybe that would have been different had I binged the entire series. I may have had a very different experience with that.
And just to touch on kind of what you said about the 5 stages of grief, there's like a really awesome Schaefer in Deadline where they actually, talk to her about writing the series finale. As you guys probably know, she's the head writer of the show, and she specifically wrote that episode. Fun fact, that goodbye between Wanda and Vision, that was one of the first things written for the entire series. And while Kevin Feige had the idea to put Wanda and Vision in a sitcom type land, and is a very straightforward idea. Well, she can alter reality, present. I think it was Schaefer that actually decided to take the storyline, and I guess if you go back and watch the 9 episodes, which I want to, I kind of want to binge it now. It lines up with the stages of grief, and I, for one, am super, super excited at what they could have just made her crazy grieving widow, because isn't that like everyone's villain? Isn't that every written off story of like, why is she doing this? Well, she's sad about it. And on with this series as a whole, and I feel like it comes to a head in the last episode. Yeah. Now, I will say, I agree with you. There are definitely some could have when you look at the series as a whole.
One thing that I would like to point out very specifically is Director Hayward, director of Sword. Because I've said very publicly and many, many, many times on this show, Hayward is not the bad guy. He is not the villain. Which, even in the finale, he's still not the villain. He does not great things.
He does shoot Lee
for no reason.
Yeah.
But that doesn't make him the villain of the show. That makes that there was in my mind, there was no reason for him to go there, to do that. I get it, like Billy and Tommy were manifestations that weren't real in the first place. So by shooting them, like he's trying to cover his tracks, but Hayward is a company guy. He's a military guy. He's a government guy. He's the guy who's out to protect his reputation and to protect the United States, I guess. And every decision he made leading up to the finale seemed completely rational. He did everything that I would expect a company man, a military guy, an officer, someone managing an entire secret sword organization would do, even in keeping in line with no, Vision's body is worth $3 billion in vibranium. We can't allow you to just bury his body in the dirt. This is such advanced technology. We can't allow that to happen. I understand that. I also understand his motivations for trying to push Wanda to her limits, to put her energy, her power into Vision's body to power him back up, to turn him back on. I understand that because that's something that military personnel would want to have happen. What I don't understand, and I also understand, once you have like when White Vision was powered up and turned on, I also understand getting that vision to kill Wanda so that you can shut this hex down, because that's a means to an end. That's a military mindset. That doesn't mean he's a villain. That just means he's willing to do what's necessary to stop the greater problem or threat of which he viewed Wanda to be a threat. Because guess what? She was a threat. She was hurting people. Like, that is not a crazy thing. But then in the finale, just to pull like, oh, well, he's been a jerk this whole time, so now we're just gonna let him shoot some kids, or we're gonna get him to try and shoot some kids and really make him the bad guy. Like, no, that it just didn't seem faithful.
Yeah, and everything that you're saying, basically that character was a two-dimensional character. He was the dude with the mustache who was like in the bad black hat. He was kind of throw off expectations, but if you read, who's the author of this, Sonny Bunch, which is a hilarious name, but he wrote a really good article, an opinion piece in the Washington Post of all places, where he talks about the real villain of the story being Wanda, and maybe there was, and I feel like that last episode, I will give it the credit, the scene when all the townspeople are begging to die, to be released, like you really get to see the suffering that they've been going through. Dottie character, Dottie, who is played by, she comes up and says, I haven't seen my daughter in months. So I think that that's something that they kind of brushed by in earlier episodes, but they really stuck and drove home the fact that Wanda is, in many ways, the villain story. It's not just black and white, but, and basically the way the Washington Post summed it up is grief makes you do terrible things.
Yes, it does.
And I think that, what was the line, was the line that Monica Rambeau says after the hex is gone and Vision and her children are gone, they come out, or she's like, for them. Well, yeah, sure, but that's not really driving home the message. Like, good people are capable of terrible things. And I feel like that line sort of weakens that message just a bit.
I think, like, kind of piggybacking off of what you just said, I think one of my other big problems with the finale is that there didn't really seem to be any consequences for Wanda doing this great and terrible thing. She just kind of,
walks away.
I get it. She lost her kids and she lost manifest vision, but like, she didn't earn those. She didn't earn those things.
Right.
So to have them taken away doesn't seem like a punishment. Like, yeah, there's no consequence. It's, hey, you jerk, you mind controlled us for an entire week. You made us feel your pain and grief, and we didn't know what was happening, and
we had your nightmares.
Yeah, like, that's kind of a terrible thing. And also, like, the showdown between Wanda and Agatha Harkness, again, what were the consequences of that? Like, in the end, Wanda overpowered Agatha and put her back under a spell to continue being Agnes. Okay, but like, what?
That's a little weird, right? Isn't it? Like, because she learns that she has mind controlled this entire, she's come to accept that she has been mind controlling this whole town, and it is wrong. It is an evil thing. She needs to let these people go. But then she turns around and kind of does it the same thing to Agnes. I get it. Agnes is a bad guy. She
lady.
Or lady. She's more of a threat than Tyler. She's also a deeper character than Tyler Hayward. Also, Catherine Hahn freaking
she
kicks
was
it.
wonderful.
She's
yeah,
awesome.
She was great.
Yeah. But that being said, Wanda just does the same thing to her, and it's almost as if a lesson isn't really learned.
Okay, Matthew Wiles has been sending in tons of comments, so we got to address these. WandaVision was great, but I was massively let down. I kind of feel your pain, Matthew. I was expecting a Marvel House of M or something huge, as was I. I didn't get that. I didn't get that at all. I think the problem was we expected comic book Marvel instead of Marvel Studios Marvel, who do their own thing and hint in the end of credit scenes. That's exactly what happened. We didn't. We allowed Marvel to do what they wanted to do, but then when they gave us what they were doing, and I also compound that, or I combine that with it being compound in a week-to-week thing as opposed to just binging the whole thing. Because, like, if we watched this 6-hour movie in theaters all at once, we wouldn't have time to formulate things. We wouldn't have time to, like, oh, what is chaos? They just said chaos magic. What does that mean? Let me go research that. What's this House of M thing? Wait, there's House of M Easter eggs all through the series? Like, we wouldn't have time to do that in the theaters. Matthew says...
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to agree with Matthew. I think I experienced a similar dissonance when I watched Civil War, because that was one of the few comic book series, like, I've read a bunch. I was really like, oh my God, this is a really important arc to nail. And in the end, the Marvel Cinematic Universe version was different, and I think it had the same mental resonance.
No, I agree with that. Civil War, there was the bait and switch of like, oh, there's all these other Winter Soldiers that you didn't know. Yeah, but we don't need them. I felt cheated with that. I really thought Captain America, they were going to kill Captain America at the end of the Civil War movie because, spoiler alert, Captain America dies in the Civil War comic. I mean, he comes back to life, yeah. But they also, like, it was such a big deal that Peter Parker's identity was revealed to the world in the Civil War comic book. That never happened. Which, again, like, and it took me a long time to accept the Civil War movie as it was because it was so different. It took me a while, but I got there.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what Matthew's touching on too is, in the House of M storyline, there are big consequences for the entire universe. Like, it basically wipes out the kind of resets the mutant button. And in a comic book story, it's very long, it's arduous. Those issues are released once a month. So I think it's hard to translate to film. Similarly with Civil War, like, the biggest thing is nobody died. Like, the emotional weight was missing because that was a big part of the Civil War
That's
comics.
What our perception was. That's what our perception was, yeah.
The storyline without that emotional, without any kind of consequence, really kind of deflates the airs out of the tires.
We have a lot more comments by Matthew. He says, you can't, let me just make sure I didn't miss one. Okay. You can't compare this letdown to Star Wars, to the Star Wars letdown. They literally gave us Quicksilver from X-Men. They kind of didn't, though. And then they turned him into a boner joke. Yeah, that was disappointing. WandaVision led us down led us down the theory path, and then crapped on us. Kind of, yeah. Even Captain Rambo, Monica Rambo, kept teasing, I know an astrophysicist that can help. Comments, and we were all thinking, oh man, Fantastic Four is coming. I mean, Agnes is the children's babysitter. It's got to be linked, but then it was nothing. Okay, so let me address the Fantastic Four astrophysicist thing. That was, Marvel never promised that. That was a MacGuffin to get to a different place. I contend they didn't intend for that to be a Fantastic Four tease. That was something that we, the fans, put on Marvel. So I will agree with everything that you just said, except for the astrophysicist thing. Natalie?
Yeah, so that is a good point. So you do bring up a really good point. I was having a discussion about WandaVision with some of our cosplay friends earlier this weekend. And that was one thing that I felt like it kind of made that ending episode a little bit hollow in the fact that there were lots of things that I feel like were referenced. Who is the astrophysicist person? And then in the last episode, there was also another similar line from Jimmy Choo's character, where he says, "Oh, I'm going to call my friends." And I know he's talking about the FBI, but it feels like there's a chunk missing. It feels like there's certain holes that are let go. Importantly,
Yeah.
Agatha Harkness in the flashback episode where we go through Wanda's life, she makes a reference there that they don't actually address. She makes a reference, I think, to the fact that Wanda has always had some kind of power.
Oh yeah,
in her.
like latent mutant abilities.
Exactly. And
I think
she
that
uses it, but they don't name it.
I think that was just them laying the groundwork for future storytelling. I don't think that they ever actually intended, because it's still too early. I think they were putting a little retroactive storytelling in there, to say she might be a mutant, she might be a witch, but now it's a little bit more nebulous. We'll address it later, and if we don't address it later, then she's a witch. But if we do address it later, then now we have the framework to build off of that and say, no, she's been a mutant this whole time.
I'm also more interested, I haven't read too much of the backstory, but there are some conversations out there about the Reed Richards throwaway specifically. Is I think the intention was to bring something else in, but again, sadly, God, I can't wait for this to stop happening. COVID really did affect the way the series actually was edited, the way it actually aired. And but I remember it being like almost like a mistake that they didn't intend.
Well, it was supposed
Reed
to
Richards
be
to
6 episodes. And then a few months ago, we get word that, well, it's going to be 9 episodes. And we're like, wait, what? Because each episode was supposed to be an hour long. And so, like, as I've been watching this week to week, I keep looking at it thinking, like, how are you going to edit this? Like, how would you have edited this into 6 episodes as opposed to 9?
9's a weird number, I will say.
Yeah, I agree. Matthew Weil says, Wanda and Vision's story was amazing and so sad. I was the same with tears, but all the teases that were nothing killed me. I again, with the exception of the astrophysicist thing, also Ralph, like, because all through the entire series, Agnes keeps saying, "My husband Ralph, my husband Ralph, Ralph, you know Ralph." And so we're like, who is Ralph? Like, when are they going to introduce Ralph? How is this character coming in? Come to find out, Ralph. I feel like that is Marvel trying to be subversive and saying, "Oh, you think Ray's parents are of importance? Well, guess what? She's not." They knew what they were doing with that, and like Ralph, my husband Ralph. Yeah, it felt disingenuous.
I feel like that's a little bit more on us, though, the viewer. I feel like, the whole repetition of Ralph fits in line with the sitcom theme that they were going to. I mean, it's pretty common to have like, "Oh, my husband's Ralph." It really worked for Catherine Hahn's character, I think, to have that throwaway Ralph gag. And I think it was us being like, maybe Ralph is like a really big deal. Maybe Ralph is this. We kind of wanted it to be more. Ultimately, the fact that Evan Peters' character was Ralph is like, oh, that sucks.
I would agree
but I
with
feel
you.
like it's more like in our heart.
I would agree with you if it weren't for one thing. If it weren't for Evan Peters playing Ralph, or actually ending up being Ralph. If it was a different character, I would have totally been okay with that. But because it becomes now a double and even a triple entendre for who is Evan Peters. Like, we first see him as, it's the crossover from the X-Men universe. Oh, this is incredible. And then we come to find out, no, he's not. He's being mind controlled. Okay, but is it Pietro from the X-Men universe who's being mind controlled to like manipulate Wanda? Is he still from the multiverse? No. Okay, that's fine. Well, then who is he? Is he Mephisto? Is he Nightmare? Is he the Grim Reaper? Because there was also a very specific Grim Reaper Easter egg in episode 2. In the opening credits of episode 2, there was a Grim Reaper Easter egg. So now we're like, is he actually the Grim Reaper or like some other character? No. Who is he? Nobody. It doesn't even matter. And
it doesn't even matter. That's the hard part. There are other things that were kind of left open-ended, like, the commercials. The last one was about a yogurt.
Yo Magic.
The kid was on the island starving. Yeah, Yo Magic. And the kid is starving to death. We were pretty much able to tie almost everything else, but I feel like that one, maybe I'm wrong.
Oh, no.
Did anyone know what that
that's
was
a direct, that was a direct reference to Agatha Harkness. Agatha Harkness was the shark. And by offering, like, do you remember at the beginning of episode 8 when we have the flashback?
She sucks the power out of
exactly,
people.
yeah. So, hey, I feed on Yo Magic. That's how she gets her energy. She feeds off of other people's magic.
Okay, so yeah, I did miss that one. That one's on me.
All right. Matthew Weil says, Hayward's jumps from trying to save a town to shooting kids. LOL. He turns into a cartoon villain. Yes.
Agree.
In White Vision's story arc, of I need to kill Vision. Of I need to kill Vision, then ship of Theseus. Oh, Matthew, I love you, but I need more punctuation. And White Vision story arc of I need to kill Vision, and then there's the ship of Theseus, and then okay, I'm out of here for no reason. Yeah, when White Vision just pieced out, I love the ship of Theseus thing, like, because that is like the most Vision thing you could ever have.
Mm-hmm.
That was awesome. But then it just pieced out, and you're like, well, I get that he's going to appear later at some point, maybe in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, maybe in Avengers 5, maybe in a Young Avengers. Mm-hmm. But, like, yeah, it just seemed weird.
So I will say kind of one thing that keeps coming back to me, because we keep talking about how Marvel didn't deliver what it was promised. The big thing is they said that this series was going to tie directly into Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. They said it was going to set up, in many ways, the universe moving forward. So although I think it's sloppy storytelling, White Vision flying, I don't know, into the sun or flying wherever, Wanda not experiencing any direct consequences from taking an entire town hostage. Oh God, we didn't even talk about Scarlet Witch and what that means. And by the way, I freaking love that costume.
Yeah, it was
great. But all of those things, I wonder if that's what they're setting up in the future. Which makes
undoubtedly
kind of a weak show, but maybe that was always the intention.
Again, like, maybe this is on me, but my takeaway from WandaVision, or before the finale, was that it was going to end so horrifically for Wanda that it was going to be out of that loss and grief that was going to set up obviously Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, and that her grief and whatever, like, if she was going to say something like no more mutants, or like, obviously she can't say no more mutants because mutants don't exist in this world, but if she was going to say something akin to that, like no more Avengers, or no more superheroes, or no more magic, or conversely, everybody has superpowers, or everybody has, like, it was, or let's
didn't we joke about this? All the mutants.
Bring
mutants.
Cross the streams. Dogs and cats living together, right? Something like that was going to be the tear in reality that opened up the multiverse. That was my theory. So I get it. That's on me. Marvel never promised us that. The show never promised us that. But it really felt like they were building up to this epic Greek tragedy, loss, what was Matthew? I just thought that it was building up something different. That it was going to end on a massive cliffhanger of like, no more mutants. Cut to black. Run the screen or run the end titles. Right. What would be the consequences of that? I don't know. We'll have to find out in Doctor Strange: Multiverse of Madness. But again, that never happened.
Oh man, that I might have been frustrated if they ended it on a cliffhanger, like straight up. But, there's still that, this might be our coffin, but there's the idea that maybe the residents of Westview are now mutants.
That's not a bad theory.
Although theories mean nothing right now.
There's precedent for it.
There's
precedent for it because of look at what happened to Monica Rambeau. Like, she went through the hex 3 times.
She did.
So that means that the residents of Westview would have had to go through it twice. And a lot of the sword agents would have had to go through it twice. So maybe not mutants per se. I don't know. Matthew Wiles has a lot more to say. He says, yeah, you're right. The scene with the townsfolk. Oh, this is perfect timing. Scene with the townsfolk was also heartbreaking, but then they destroy that scene when at the end, Monica Rambeau says that they don't know what you had to give up. Hang on. Wanda psychologically tortured a whole town. She just lost some made-up kids she knew for 2 days. I think it was like 3 days, but yeah. Compared to them, she gave up nothing. I agree fully with you, Matthew. She didn't sacrifice anything, and she got to walk away with no consequences. The only consequence that happened was that there's 2 consequences. One, the entire town of Westview is pissed at her. The second consequence is that she's now on Sword's radar, and Sword's like, this Wanda Maximoff, we need to pay attention to her. She's trouble. That's it. So that's frustrating. Matthew Wells says, Agnes is not a bad lady. It's bad guy, Matthew. Just kidding. Agnes is not a bad lady. She wanted to release the town. She is a character who does right things the wrong way. Kind of?
In the comics, maybe. But that's not... I don't necessarily agree that that's the Agnes that we saw in the MCU. So based on what we saw in that episode of the real Agnes, it seemed as if she was trying to she was trying to drain, like, the whole joke was, I just want to drain Wanda of her power and take it for myself. Like, I don't necessarily think she was trying to save the town.
I think she was trying to save the town, because one of the things that makes Agatha Harkness endure is her anonymity. So if we have all this attention being brought to Westview that there are witches in Westview, well, then now her kind of cover's blown. So I do think that she wanted to save the town. The problem with the Agatha Harkness character is that we never got to find out what her motivations are. We know that she wanted the Scarlet Witch power, but beyond that, we have no idea what she wants. Like, what, as an improviser, when you're on stage, there are 3 things that need to happen. We need to know the who, we need to know the what, and we need to know the where. We got the who with Agatha's character. We got the where, obviously. We got a brief taste of the what. Like, what does she want more than anything else? She wants to be the Scarlet Witch. Okay, cool. And she also has the power to suck energy, the Yo Magic energy, right? She can suck magic from other people, but we don't know why she wanted that. Like, how is that going to help her? How is that going to hurt other people? Frustrating when you don't know. Matthew Wiles, I'm too I'm too wound up by you both agreeing with my feelings for punctuation. I love you, Matthew. I love you. I will say this. You have been getting better. it's hard for me to understand nuance when there's no like breaks or like quotations or hyphens or periods. Even if it's just like, hey, hang on a second, ... Here's another thought, ... Like that, because it's like it all strings on for me. It's like one big long run-on sentence.
And how can you do your voice acting when you read comments and pull quotes? You need that voice acting
I'm
opportunity.
too wound up by you both agreeing with my feelings for punctuation. Yeah. I love you. You know I love you. Get out of here with your nonsense. Last comment so far, Matthew Wiles. In the comics, her biggest role is Reed Richards' kid's babysitter. LOL. She is the Tyrion of Marvel. She knows things and drinks.
I'd watch that. If that's what Marvel's planning, I'd watch that.
Kind of. I mean, like, yeah, she's not necessarily a babysitter, but she's Wanda's. They were rivals, and I guess in the end, they're always it's like the same distinction between like Mystique and the X-Men, where like sometimes their goals align, but let's be honest, Mystique is always kind of like out for her own. Like she was a member of the X-Men for a long time. But then, you know, she went back to her selfish ways and she got booted. So, yeah, Agnes is always kind of Wanda's teacher. But yeah, she also has her own selfish motivations too. So I don't know. But I love the comparison to Tyrion Lannister. I know things and I drink, or is it I drink and I know things? I drink and I know things.
That's the one.
Yeah. I could definitely see that being a thing, which would be great if they were able to lean into that a little bit more in future installments. That is the last comment so far. I feel like there was another thing that I wanted to bring up that we haven't talked about yet, and I can't remember what that was. Natalie, final thoughts about WandaVision season finale.
While my final thoughts, while the series as a whole was not perfect because there were a lot of plot holes that, you know, at the end of the day, a plot hole is just bad storytelling. It's just not good storytelling. There are far too many, I think, for a lot of people that were invested in it to feel like, oh, no, that's okay, you know. But for me, as a Lost fan, and this is how I accept and move on, I think I was able to see past the plot holes, and I really appreciate creating a show with such dynamic characters, except for Tyler Hayward. But, you know, it's worth the watch. But I don't know if Disney, or the Marvel end of Disney, is prepared to really nail telling TV show series stories within the movie stories, because you got to think about it. The TV show stories, they're not going to make them any money. You know, you're signed up for Disney Plus,
right,
and that's it. The movies are what will continue to pull revenue. And while they do go hand in hand here, I hope that they don't make a habit of, you know, sort of delivering 3/4 of what you think you should get out of a series, where, you know, they save everything for the movies.
Let me address that real quick. You say that the movies are where Disney's really going to make their money based on Disney Plus's model compared against Netflix, because even though Disney hasn't released all of their numbers, they've released some numbers, as has Netflix. When you compare it against what Netflix is doing, they are on track to blow Netflix out of the water by 2023, I believe, in terms of revenue, because Netflix has to pay for licensed content, like if you want to watch The Office or a pop original series, Schitt's Creek, they have to pay a licensing fee to put that on their streaming service, whereas Disney doesn't have that overhead, and they just get to make pure profit. So I do think that Disney Plus in under 5 years from now will be their main stream of revenue. I think it will. But that being said, yeah, you're right. I mean, there's smaller stories to be told. There's larger tentpole stories to be told. And Matthew Wiles is now saying, I'm saying she is not a bad guy. Yeah. Agatha Harkness? Yeah. I don't... Yeah. Do you think she's an evil character, Natalie?
I don't necessarily think that she's... I like the idea of comparing her to a Tyrion Lannister. I like the idea of her being more anti-hero-like in the future. I think it's because people just love Catherine Hahn so much. You know, they're going to be forced to integrate her into future movies, kind of like the way Loki is. Like, I don't necessarily think when they made the first Thor, they expected Tom Hiddleston to be so popular.
Well, he was supposed to...
But that's what you get when you make a really good villain.
Well, he was supposed to be like him falling off of the Rainbow Bridge in the first Thor movie. That was supposed to be his big death scene. But because he was so popular, they brought him back for the next one.
I think the same thing's going to happen with Agatha. And ultimately, it's not a story. They don't necessarily choose to do stories where the villains always win. I think they're going to do something like, you know, some kind of team up in a way. So I think we're going to see more of Agatha Harkness, thankfully, maybe even in the movies. And I bet they didn't see that coming. But yeah, I don't think that she'll be a strictly two-dimensional character. I'm excited to see what they do with her.
I don't think they can afford to have her be a two-dimensional character. Matthew, to your point, yeah, I mean, they didn't give us enough backstory to make her villainous. I think she was played as villainous in the show because we didn't have the backstory. We don't really know what her motivations are.
Yeah.
So, I mean, she gets to be a nebulous villainous character. Because
my question is to the casual viewer, do you see Agatha as a villain or as a misunderstood person? Because I feel like to the casual viewer that's not familiar with Agatha's comic backstory or her role, yeah, she's a little bit like the Wicked Witch of the West.
I'd agree with that. All right, guys, we have... I'm starting to lose steam. Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, click like. If you really like this video, click subscribe. And if you really, really like this video, click share. Because that is exactly what Tony Stark's Iron Man would want you to do. Doon,